Elizabeth Pampalone, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have the chance to chat. You have a really interesting background. I know you're doing some really cool and creative things. And so today we're going to be talking about effectively building teams and managing projects generally, but also specifically as it relates to your own company and some of the entrepreneurial efforts that you've been a part of in your recent past. As we get started today, I just want to share Elizabeth's brief bio with the listeners. Elizabeth Pampalone is an international speaker, successful entrepreneur, and expert marketer with 20 years of experience, over 20 years of experience, actually. Her innovative approach helps overwhelmed business owners and burnt out nonprofit directors to achieve success and freedom through the power of what she calls absolute marketing. And I imagine Elizabeth will be sharing more with us about what she means by that. But welcome, Elizabeth. It's really, truly an honor to have the chance to chat. And anything else you would like to share by way of background before we really dive on into the discussion today?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up, which is, pretty good. It's definitely been an interesting journey. I've been everything from a solopreneur to an employer to going back and forth sometimes, having small teams, large teams. So yeah, I got a lot of different things that have gone on in my career.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's start with what you're currently doing. Tell us a little bit about your company and what you mean by absolute marketing.
Well, absolute marketing is something that I developed for myself about, gosh, I'm going to say probably about 10 years ago. And I just did it on my own, just a little method that I created for myself to keep everything streamlined with my marketing. And about 4 years ago, I realized that I kind of had a system and it was kind of pretty good. So I changed everything that I was doing in the marketing world. I went away from all the traditional timelines and project, setups. And I just said, you know what, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing absolute marketing. I'm sharing it with everyone that I meet. And if anybody thinks that it could help them, then let's work together. And it's been going really well for the past 4 years. And this year we're finally launching our online course. And I'm also going to be writing a book about my memoirs and about how all this stuff came to be in the next year.
Excellent. Well, we can all look for that. And I think understanding, that there's all these different approaches out there for people to be successful in different niche areas, and so absolute marketing is your approach. I'd love to hear a little bit more about any of the specifics around that if you're willing to share it. But then
Yeah.
the larger picture, we'll then move into talking about, okay, well, what do you do currently in building your teams and managing your projects as you're doing, you're a marketer first, but you, just like everyone else who leads people, who has teams of people, you have to think about leadership. You have to put that hat on and you have to think about how to effectively maximize the potential of the people on your teams and with the projects they're working on. So let's start with absolute marketing. I'd love to hear a little bit more specifically about that.
So absolute marketing is a 5-day system. It is basically supposed to cover all of your marketing needs in 5 days. And we create an entire year's worth of marketing in those 5 days. So the first day we create a brand, which is everything from the messaging, mission, vision, naming it. Sometimes people have the wrong names for their companies. We'll rename or name their company, getting their right domain names, and then creating logos, colors, fonts, and writing an ebook. That's day 1. Day 2 is website design and build. We'll go from, nothing, no website, to a fully functional website in 1 day. Day 3 is 12 months of social media posts. Day 4 is 12 months of blog posts. And day 5 is 12 months of email sends, or 12 months of email marketing options. Or we also create funnels in those days as well. So it's really covering all the 5 main bases, the 5 pillars of marketing, and doing them each 1 day at a time until all of them are completed. And this really does cover about 1 year's worth of what we call like marketing tasks, where things you would be doing on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. We're going to get all of that done in 5 days ahead of time, and then just give you that freedom to be creative for the other things you need to be creative for in your business.
Well, that sounds really cool. And I like the way that you take a really proactive approach. Now, obviously, during the course of the year, you likely would have to pivot and do other things as well, but being proactive, putting things in place in advance, and just getting some of those things kind of off your daily checklist, can ease up time, free up time for you to focus on broader strategy issues, to look at the external environment, find ways to pivot, but also think about the people management issues, the leadership issues that are important to help your organization to be successful. And you mentioned, or it was mentioned in your bio, how you do a lot of work with nonprofits, and they're notoriously understaffed, overworked, underpaid, and so anything to kind of not just simplify, because that's not the right term probably, but to streamline, and to just have things in place so it's plug and play as much as possible. That's going to really be helpful for people who are kind of short-staffed, just kind of bootstrapping their business.
Yeah, it is. And definitely with the nonprofits, this is very helpful. And you mentioned pivoting, people had said, well, what if coronavirus type things happen? And, how would that work with my business? And I'd have to start all over. And honestly, a lot of our clients didn't. They didn't have to start over, because what we did was we build in enough evergreen content that it doesn't matter what's happening around you in most cases. That you can still continue with those same posts, and then you can add additional ones, because the more the better. With social media, with email marketing, if you have something else to say, if you have something additional to add, you can always add that in, which is great. And this really does, like you said, free up that human capital, essentially, that you can now focus on the actual people in the organization, those, like you said, those big strategy options and things you have to think about and decisions you have to make. So we're trying to get some of this off the owner's plate or that director's plate, because we've seen with nonprofits especially that the directors really have the biggest and hardest job. Sometimes they are the marketing department, in addition to being the director of the entire organization. So we try to make sure that we're giving them options to get as much of that done early as possible. And then, we actually, with our nonprofits, we meet with them quarterly. With our small businesses, we kind of do we're going to teach you, you can kind of take this and run with it. We might be here to help if you need us. But with the nonprofits, we see that there's more of a need to have an ongoing relationship. So we have those quarterly calls, and we're switching strategies and changing things up and adding new things every quarter, so that they're not overwhelmed and they can give us, the information they need to get out there, and we help them get it out to the world, basically.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I applaud you, for the good work and for addressing that really critical need. I mean, for any business that's bootstrapping, but particularly for nonprofits who do so much good in our communities, and it's so necessary. And they need, all the help they can get, so they can focus on, what they do best, and that is serving their communities.
Absolutely.
Well, let's pivot a little bit now and talk more about the people side of all of this, and your experience. So we're thinking about having effective teams, and then effectively leading projects and project management. What are some of your experiences, and perhaps some key principles that you've pulled out of those experiences, that you could share with the listeners in regards to managing effective teams, particularly in this kind of marketing space that you work in?
Yeah, usually the people in this marketing type space are solopreneurs. They build the websites, they do the graphics, whatever it is they're trying to accomplish, they do the social media. They pretty much do all the things and wear all the hats. And then they get big enough, which was my experience. I got big enough to maybe, let's say, have a VA, or maybe I needed to have an employee or some kind of, person to come in and help me a couple times a week, whatever. And what I found was, when I first hired my first employee, I was looking for somebody who was almost like my friend. I wasn't trying to hire a friend, but my initial outlook on the situation was, I need to be able to get along with this person. I need to be able to work with this person effectively. I need to be able to have a camaraderie and a rapport with this person. And what I found was that was extremely detrimental, because I was looking for too much of that and not enough of the other items, of the other things on that checklist, the skills aspect, which the person that I hired did have skills, But there were other skills that I kind of thought, oh, those aren't really necessary. These other things are more important. And so I've seen, as I've hired over the years and different people for pretty much similar positions, my hiring has changed because I've basically matured and had these little mini downfalls, these little mini issues as I've gone along, that has helped me realize things. And so, for me, it's been trial and error, because I didn't go to a fancy school. I didn't get any education on how to hire. It was just, you need somebody, you got to find someone, figure it out, and so over the years, I've kind of learned what to look for and what not to look for. But I think the first, thing that I really learned the hard lesson on was hiring someone who was, I didn't even know them before I started hiring. It was just, we became friends, and it was too familiar. It was too close. And they took advantage of that. And that was unfortunate for us, because I did lose money in the process. I lost business in the process. And it also hurt me on a personal level, because then I thought, well, we're friends. Why is she doing this? So I think that as smallpreneurs or solopreneurs, when they first venture out into that first one, they may or may not be looking for exactly the right things. And so having this very set, this is the job description, these are the most important things, rather than, can I work well with this person? I think personality has a little bit to do with it, but I also think that the skill set, the ability to be autonomous, because a lot of times in this day and age, we're not getting together in offices. We are working remotely. The ability to reply to emails on time and in timely manner, ability, things like that, to be proactive, to take initiative when things start to fall apart or communication starts to break down. So I think some of those things are becoming more important now. And like I said, my experience of hiring the first person that I hired was maybe, I guess about 7-8 years ago. And now we're in such a different world. And I've hired people since COVID, and it's been a much different skill set that I'm looking for at this point, because of the autonomy that is needed. Like I said, the problem solving, the initiative taking, the ability to check their email every day. There's some people that I've hired before, and they're like, oh, I don't check my email every day. And I was like, no, that's kind of a requirement. So, those kind of things I've seen change just in general of the hiring process. But then also, like I said, I've seen myself learn from some of those mistakes I've made in the past.
I love those examples, and what you said, in terms of just learning as you go. I think that's how it is for most people who are in leadership and people management roles. Some do go through, like an MBA or something like that, and then might focus on those things. But the vast majority of people who lead and manage others don't formally go through that. But that doesn't mean you can't be effective. It does mean that there's probably going to be some trial and error, and that there's going to be a little bit of learning through the school of hard knocks, and that's okay though, because you have a growth mindset. You recognize that you will, this is a temporary setback. You will get past this, and next time you'll do better. And the people management trap that you fell into early is a super, super common one. And that is, people tend to overemphasize this idea of hiring. We often call it hiring for fit in the organization. And now I'm all for, being aware of people's values and hiring, having values congruence and hiring people who are going to generally fit well with the organization, with the team, with the leader. I mean, I think that is important, but people rely way too much on that a lot of times. And sometimes it gets even to the extreme of where you're trying to basically hire someone who's just like you, who's your friend, who could be your friend, who, you're so worried about being able to be compatible that you forget about the expertise that's needed, and frankly, the diversity that's needed. So if you're hiring people that are just like you, you're not going to be hiring people who are going to push back on your thinking, because they're thinking the same way as you. So hiring for fit doesn't mean hiring your friend. It doesn't mean hiring people who are like you. It doesn't mean hiring people that look like everyone else in the organization. Quite the opposite, actually. That's not what diversity and inclusion is about. But hiring for fit is all about people who buy into the mission, the purpose, who have shared values, and some of those types of issues around the team. right? And so you
Yeah.
fell into that trap. That's a super common trap, but you learned from it and you grew from it, and now you've moved on and you've been able to, um, you know, have a framing when you're going through the hiring process of let's get the right people on the bus, let's get them in the right seats based on their knowledge, skills, and abilities, and we'll develop relationships. Once they come, we'll develop relationships over time built on mutual respect and trust that we develop with them.
Yeah, and you mentioned diversity and inclusion. It's kind of funny because the first person I ever hired was actually an African American woman in tech, and like women in tech in general is just unheard of. Women who actually know what they're doing in tech. And then, this African American woman, she was very brilliant at what she did. Like I said, she had the skill sets, but there were other skill sets that were not her strong suits. And I just kind of was like, yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, but we also got along because we had some similar values. We had some similar, experiences. We were same age. Like we had all these things in common that was really what led to that relationship being too close, and so I've definitely seen that change in me as I've looked for people. Like you said, that relationship will happen. You don't have to force it ahead of time or say, oh well, because I have a relationship now, I need to make this person part of the team. And something else about about the teams and about diversity and inclusion, like I've never tried to hire just men or just women or this or that, but it's kind of interesting that the people that come across my path, I have been mostly women. I think I've hired one man. Actually, I've hired two men in my career, and I've hired more women. So it's been really interesting that that I find these really great tech women to be a part of these different teams that I've had over the years, and it's just been interesting to me that like you can kind of, the more the circles that you're in, you will find the right people, and they'll not have to be with you for years. They might be with you for a season. And that's the other thing, not being so reliant on just that one person. That one person is doing 80% of your work, then there's an issue. You've got to either have more employees or you got to delegate differently. And that's kind of what I see with these nonprofits, is that they get the director and they're doing about 80 to 70 to 80% of the work. And then they might have one or two other people that are in a finance role or in maybe a marketing role or maybe an operations role. And then the director's still doing everything else. And if something happens to the director, or they have to take a leave of absence, or they go on maternity leave or whatever that is, then everything falls apart. I had one director that I just worked with. I'd been working with her for 4 years, and she ended up just suddenly retiring during COVID. And the organization was scrambling for about 3 months. And so what I've been able to do is actually go into organizations like that and say, okay, who is actually here? Let me assess your skill set and let me show you what tasks you can take on. And it, it's never where it's like too much. I'm not trying to give someone too much for their job description or whatever, but there's always something that the director says, oh, well, I'll just do it. It's faster. I'll just do it. It's easier. And I think as business owners, we do the same thing. I'll just do it. It's much quicker if I just do it because I know what I'm doing. And we take on these roles that we really should be delegating. And that's really hard. I was, when I first hired my second team, a few years after the first team, it was for the marketing company. And I had all these tickets that would come in from clients that were on maintenance, systems. And they would say, well, I need this and I need that. And I would delegate to my team, and it would come back and it would not be right, or it would be, have missing pieces. They wouldn't read it all the way and things like that. And so I spent time educating and saying, nope, do this again, or got to fix these pieces. And they're like, oh, I didn't see that, or, whatever. And I spent time like going back and forth with them. And the clients, I said, you know what, it's going to be a delay. Like there's going to be a 3-day gap, a 4-day gap, whatever. I gave myself time in the delegation process, and I helped work with that team member who was having errors, missing things, until it was clear enough where they might have, instead of 1 error a day, they might have 1 error a week, or 1 error every 2 weeks. And so I put a lot of time into that, and it made me frustrated because I knew that I could just go in there and it took me 5 minutes and I'd be done. But that wasn't the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise was to build up the team, help them realize that they had, help myself realize that they had to learn too. I learned it at some point of all these things, and they had to learn it as well. And so putting my time and effort into that has now allowed me to have the freedom to do, like you said, those big picture things, because I have a team that I can say, hey, here's the 10 tickets for today. Have fun. I'll see you guys tomorrow with it. And then the next day, everything is done. And there might be an error or two, and I check over everything. I like to make sure that I'm at least overseeing everything, but I'm not sitting there physically going, okay, well, now I got to fix this, and now I got to fix that. And then I'm not paying them and then feeling like, well, now that was a waste because they didn't do it right. I took the time and early on, especially when I first bring someone on, and I'm like, let's work this out. I'm going to help you figure this out. I'm not going to tell you the answers, but I'm going to help you figure it out on your own so that you will see this again next time. You'll see a similar thing next time, and you'll go, I remember we did this. I remember how we fixed that. I remember she said to look for this thing when this person sends us stuff. So it helps them learn their job better. It helps me feel more confident about their ability in their job. And also after a few weeks of training, because a lot of times we don't train like, what traditional jobs used to have training. A lot of jobs now don't have training. And if you take the time to put in and invest in your people, that will come back to you 100-fold for sure.
So much there that you said that I just love. And you're absolutely right that it's about empowerment of your team. And I faced the same thing so many times. Like, it would be so much easier in the short term, at least. It would be so much easier for me to just jump in and do that thing. And that's where a lot of micromanaging comes in. It's probably well-intentioned leaders who just think, oh, well, I'll just do that because it's quick, it's easy, I can just do it. Or because they don't know how, I'm just going to help them or whatever. And so they frame it in terms of helping. But it's not helping. It's not helping your people because they're not developing the skills they need to be successful in their careers. It's not helping you in the long term. It might be easier in the short term. In the long term, though, even if you can do it quickly, it's still taking up mental bandwidth for you to be able to keep track of all of these things. So you have to develop trust with your team. You have to develop trust in the processes so that you can delegate and actually let go of things, free up your mental bandwidth to focus on the people issues, the strategic issues, the product issues, all the stuff that you need to be focusing on as the leader of the organization or of the team. And then let other people do their stuff. That's what we need to do. And that will make things easier in the long term, even if in the short term it means we have to spend a little bit more time coaching, a little bit more time training, a little bit more time, just really getting people up to speed and communicating expectations and making sure everyone's on the same page.
And that really goes to, the second piece of leadership that I really subscribe to, which is getting them to buy into what you're doing. That is a huge piece that's missed when, you go and say work at, random place A. Like, you could never, when you're the owner, you have this ability to impart your passion to the team, to your team. And a lot of owners don't do that. A lot of directors don't do that. They might hire someone straight out of college. The person they know they want to work for a nonprofit. They're the first one that hires them. Great. They have a job, they're working, everything's fine. They'll do what they can, end of story. But what is not imparted, and this, like you said, it's not about fit. It's not about finding the person that's already jazzed about your business or your idea. It's about getting the person that you do bring on who has a skill set, who has the, ability, whatever that is you're looking for, and getting them to, over time, basically build that relationship and have them go, I am really invested in this. I am excited for this. When you have a win in the organization, whether it's business or a nonprofit, they are like, yes. And they feel that too, because they were a part of that. And, getting people to do things, sometimes they don't want to do. Sometimes they are like, it's not their favorite. They're not thrilled about it. But it's because they now believe in the mission. It makes those types of tasks and those types of delegations so much easier. And they go, you know what? It's not my favorite thing to do, to go to a golf course on a Saturday morning at 4 a.m. and set up the tent and get, for whatever it is they're setting up and sit out in the sun for 8 hours. but it's because I believe in what we're doing. That makes sense to me. That means that we'll have more business. It means we'll make more money. It means the business will grow. It means my efforts are worth something. So it's definitely, a good thing that as you build the relationship, to impart that excitement and that passion that most business owners and most directors have for the organization they're working with. And there's ways of doing that that are not so, that are a little more subtle than others. You don't have to just be like, okay, guys, I love this business. Do you love this business? Let me hear you. Like, it's not that kind of call and response, but it's an additional, part on the business owner and the director's part to come in the morning and not be like, oh my gosh, everything is horrible. Why is all of this a mess? The leader has to say, we're going to have a great day. This is going to be a good day. Things are going to happen. We're going to have mistakes. We're going to have issues, but it's still going to be a great day. We work here. We get to do this. And I think that stand-ups are something of the past that I really think should be brought back. And I think more and more people are doing this with Zoom and the stand-up. And I know a lot of people know what this is, but the stand-up is where you get into a huddle in the morning, first thing, and you really kind of just pep talk everybody. You find out what's going on for the day. You figure out what the schedule is going to be. You make sure everybody's got what they need. But it's this quick, everyone's together, everyone's united, everyone has a common goal for today. And you as the leader show things are going to happen, but we're going to get through it and we're going to make it great. We're going to make it an awesome day. And working here is not drudgery. Being here all day today is not going to make you feel like you just want to go home and curl up in a ball and watch Netflix all night. Like, you want to be a part of this team because we're accomplishing things, we're celebrating wins, and we're fixing problems as they arise. We're not letting things, fester and team members, fight and all that kind of stuff. So I think as the leader, I've worked with a couple of project managers over the last couple months in coaching, and they've gotten away from the stand-up idea. And I'm like, you got to get back to it. It's what's going to make a huge difference in morale and also in just people buying into the mission long term.
Well, I love that. This has really been just a fun discussion. I love learning more about what you're doing, the types of project management approaches and the people approaches that you've used as you developed your own leadership style and entrepreneurial approach within your organization. We're about out of time for today, but before we part ways, I do want to give you a chance to share with the listeners how they can get in touch with you, connect, and perhaps reach out to find out more.
Yes, thank you so much. And I really had so much fun talking with you about this. It's not a topic I get to expound on a lot, so I'm very happy that I got to talk with you about it today. And you can go to my website, getabsolutemarketing.com, and you can find all of our options there, our self-paced course, our coaching, our one-on-one sessions. And if you're a nonprofit, we have a nonprofit sector called beyondthecause.co. So if that's something you're interested in, you can get to that from our website as well. And I do want to say this to everybody who's dealing with maybe a little bit of a tight situation, or maybe dealing with some internal issues that they just can't figure out and they're trying really hard. And they maybe seem like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, because right now I know that's happening for a lot of people in this space. And so I just want to say that everything is temporary. This is temporary. The next phase will be temporary, and we'll move to another phase. So just keep going, and you will get through whatever it is you're dealing with, especially with human capital. It's one of the hardest jobs and one of the most rewarding jobs you can have when you're dealing with people. And just remember that it's temporary and it'll pass, and you'll get to a good time, I promise.
Well, thank you so much. It really has been a pleasure. I really do hope that listeners will reach out to Elizabeth, find out more. Thank you for all of the insights you shared today, and I hope everyone stays healthy and safe and that they have a wonderful week.